We're back.
We're back.
How's it going?
2 weeks in a row. We're back. 2025.
Consistency.
We're doing this.
You've
It's
got
consistency. It's about getting the reps in.
Congrats.
Thank you.
2 weeks in a row.
It's so hard for me to show up and talk into a microphone.
It's only like
Most of my job.
Yeah, this is your sweet spot.
This is my sweet spot.
This is your genius state.
This is my flow state. My flow state is talking out of my ass about carbohydrate consumption.
KT tape.
KT tape. This is what I was born to do.
What are we getting into today?
We're going to start with some hot or nots. Then I was going to do our nutrition power ranking. We're going to rank our top 5 favorite things that we like to eat while running.
Okay.
So,
all right.
like ways to get carbs in your body while moving.
Excellent.
Then we were going to talk a little bit about high carb fueling. This is something that I'm getting a lot of athlete questions about. I know there's a lot of buzz.
It's hot right now.
It's hot, which we love. People looking at science, we love people consuming carbohydrates, and we're going to talk about the nuances and strategy involved in high carbohydrate consumption. And then we're going to spend a lot of time talking about what to do if you're in a training plateau. Like if you've stalled out, what potential solutions might be, what causes might be, and how to sort of like get off the plateau.
Yeah.
Training plateaus are inevitable for a lot of folks. Like it is part of the process. Not every single day is going to be getting better and better and better for years on end. But, I think that a lot of times a training plateau can be an invitation to investigate what you could be doing better or different or smarter in training. So we're going to dive into that.
Love it.
Good
Let's
stuff.
Get creative.
Let's get creative. So TJ, hot or not, toe socks.
Toe socks are okay. This is a personal answer. This isn't a coaching.
That's what the
helmet.
whole thing of this is.
I'm not putting my coaching hat on. Oh, it really?
Yeah.
I must have missed that.
It's
the
just
whole
hot
time.
takes.
Hot takes. Toe socks are just weird. So they're not hot. I think
I've worn them in
weird.
every 50+ mile race I've ever done.
I don't want to wear a glove on my foot. It just
I have little skinny finger, like my feet look like little hands.
You get the worst blisters on your toes.
Dude, look at my
after
feet
races.
right now.
I don't
like,
look at those.
These
things.
are not OnlyFans ready
Keep
right
your
now.
Socks on,
They are
please.
not in good shape. I don't know what it is. Like I feel all the rest of my body feels totally great, but like my feet are a little beat up from training this winter.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Maybe I need to
They
get
are
some new
not
socks or
looking
something.
good.
They're not.
They're black and blue. People.
Not sexy right now. Yeah, they
No.
kind of look like dog meat.
Oh,
Yeah.
God.
So anyway, toe socks.
Do they do anything for you if your toes look
Yes,
like that?
this is like if I wasn't wearing
they're
them,
not working.
it would just look like ground beef in the shape of a foot.
I don't think they're working. Clearly,
I
there's
need new
something
ones.
wrong here.
So like one of my pre-race superstitions, this is so bad, but I'd always get a new pair of Injinji. I like the double sock that has like the thin toe liner and then like a thicker outer sock.
It's a lot of material to rub.
I double
against
bag
other
it. I
material.
double bag that shit.
Nope. I'm a hard no.
I've worn that for every 100 I've ever finished.
And the one that you DNF'd?
Also wore it for that one, yeah.
Ooh.
N of 1.
They say a lot of DNFs happen because of blisters.
I had a lot more going on than blisters. Although I did also have blisters. The whole thing was fucked. It was truly madly, deeply fucked at every level.
To the 100-mile distance.
Yeah, ultra running. Like, parts of me chafed that, God, I hope never chafe again. I didn't know that those parts could chafe, to be honest. That was new.
Ooh.
Yeah.
TMI, maybe? A little too
Definitely.
much information.
Sorry. River crossings, man.
Censor.
Shit's fucked. Anyway, I like toe socks. I mean, this is like totally a personal preference thing. And I'm always like, whenever athletes ask about this stuff, I'm always like, well, okay, here's what I use. But also I have like weird ass little chimpanzee feet. So big old grain of salt for that.
Here's a tip. Try it out.
Try it out.
See if you like it.
Hashtag not sponsored by Injinji. Hashtag would like to be because... Like I said, my superstition is I have to buy a new pair before all of my long races because I'm really paranoid. I know this is insane, but I'm really paranoid there'll be like a single granule of like dirt that wasn't sufficiently washed out. And like, you know how socks, they just never get as soft as the first time. Like they're always a little crispy.
I had a friend in college who was on the tennis team with me, and he never wore the same pair of socks more than once.
Well, I don't do an A race in the same pair of socks. If it's an
every
A race,
day,
new socks.
He broke open a brand new pair of
They were
Nikes.
single use?
Single use.
That's insane, dude.
Not only is that bad for the environment, but that's just a little wild to contemplate. But that's what he did.
That's wow. Well,
Yeah.
okay, at least I'm not that, because I do feel like
Fresh socks.
I like a fresh sock. I like going into a race knowing like this is the best, like this is virgin wool on my feet right now. It's really important to me.
And that's why after a race, the socks just sit in our garage in a bag for like 2 years.
So my really bad habit is like, you know, I get like thrown into the back of the car. I'm like out of my mind because I just ran 100 miles. I peel off all my clothes and socks. I let them marinate in the back of my car for a couple weeks. And then TJ gets onto me. So then I just put them in the garage. I don't carry them the additional 10 feet to the washer.
It's bad, people.
I don't have the discipline. I don't have the work ethic. So they just sit in the garage. And like right now, I think they're definitely the socks I wore at Leadville. They're kind of like,
2018.
Yeah, Leadville 2008. They're still like foot shaped. Like they can
so
stand on
crusty.
their own. They're very
so
crusty. I just don't know if I can bring them back from the brink.
You can't. That's because you need to put them in the wash right away.
Yeah.
All right, we digress. Okay, KT tape, hot or not?
I like it. I like it for preventing blisters.
Chafing?
I preventatively chafe like the front of my chest because I get my vest chafes, like sort of on my collarbone and the back of my neck. So I use it for that. I actually should. I've been getting chafage because of my heart rate monitor. So I should I'm just going to be wearing like a little tape suit under my t-shirt at the end of the day. I think it's very helpful for preventing chafe. And I'll also say when I was healing from my Achilles injury, obviously I was doing the PT. I was really watching my nutrition. I was doing all the other things, but there are some injuries that using KT tape as like the fifth most important thing you do can be really helpful.
What does it do specifically? Like
it helps put more load higher up on the calf and takes load off the tendon.
Interesting. Yeah. I've never used it, so I'm gonna go not hot.
Yeah,
because N of 1 always for this.
N of 1 always. I would say that if you're ever like, oh, I can just KT tape it and not go to PT, that's not the approach we want to have. KT, it also can be kinesio tape, rock tape, like the tape, like athletic tape. I'm a huge fan of it. I put it all over myself for chafing and blister reasons.
Okay, when you go to a race and you're on the start line, or maybe you're spectating, and you see the runners take off, and then you see somebody who's got KT tape like around their patella tendon.
Oh yeah. It's like
No,
chumming the water.
okay.
I smell blood.
Unfiltered response. What do you think immediately?
I'm gonna race that bitch down.
Oh, okay. My thought is, man, they're coming into some injuries. It's going to be a really long day.
Yeah.
That's my thought.
Well, I don't wear it like most of my KT tape is like chafe tape, which I mean I don't know if that's a sign of weakness other than like what is it? What's skin? Epidermis weakness. Epidermal weakness.
Skin.
I have soft skin. I'm very delicate.
It's not a weakness.
A knowledge worker.
It's just you don't want to do an ultra if you're already injured.
Yeah. Well, right. Well, I know, but like, you know, I have raced with KT, like when I was doing my first couple races coming back from my Achilles injury, I definitely taped it kind of more as like a thunder shirt than like
a
I believe, like a
crutch.
security blanket.
Yeah.
Correct.
That could be helpful. That way you don't get into those old patterns.
And I still like, oh man, an insane drop bag thing I did for like 2 years is I pre-cut like in order to tape your Achilles, there's like a really specific way you're supposed to tape it. So I pre-made that anytime I for 2 years, literally any drop bag I encountered, I had it so that if like my Achilles started getting sore in the middle of a race, I could slap some KT tape on. I never did it, thankfully, but like it was sort of my like weird drop bag, like that was my like pacifier for a while.
Nice. All right. Altitude tents, hot or not?
Not.
I feel like if I was a loaded guy and I had like a bunch of thousands of dollars to spend on something, I would consider
And you
trying
never
it out.
wanted to snuggle again? You just want to sleep alone, hypoxic forever?
it could be a good way to get sleep apnea for
Yeah,
sure.
definitely a good way. So I'm not a huge fan of this because I feel like it's really one of those marginal gain things. I feel like if you're a mountaineer, actually things change. But if you're trying to do,
Yeah.
like if you're training for like high altitude, like Himalayan expeditions, go ahead, knock yourself out. And also, why are you listening to this podcast? But for runners, I'm generally not a huge fan because isn't it like you want to recover low, right?
Yes.
Like you want, like that's where you want to
Train high, sleep low.
train high, sleep low. So training low and sleeping high is kind of an expensive way to to not recover well.
Right. But the point of it would be to adapt to a specific elevation that
Right.
maybe you're racing at, or if you were to sleep if you were to sleep at altitude for 10 to 14 days, your body physiology would change in order to, like, you would start to create more red
Right.
blood cells, which can help with EPO production.
Did
and
you
all
see
this
any
stuff.
specific studies that showed that was a positive intervention for runners specifically?
Well, runners do traditionally do altitude camps.
Runners,
So,
well, right, but an altitude tent is different than an altitude camp.
well, it's not that different. Because, like, when you do a traditional altitude camp, you would sleep at altitude as well.
Right.
So,
But you're also training at altitude.
yes, you're doing both. But this would be like, and some people do also train inside their altitude tents. I think
Right,
Killian is
right.
pretty famous for having done that for a lot of his Everest attempts. And
So
things
Killian,
like
if
that.
you're listening, great job. Keep doing what you're doing, bud. I would say for
Never
the
do
majority
what
of
Killian
athletes, I think it's like very limited. I don't have a study at the tip of my fingers. I do not recommend this for any of our athletes. I think there are much better ways to spend your time and energy.
Oh, yeah.
But if you're just like dying to like sleep alone and die a hypoxic virgin, like get him, girl.
I don't know. For me, I've kind of tried a lot of the tricks out there. I would be curious to see like what the effects would be. My guess is like I'd probably feel pretty crappy.
Yeah.
And
It feels
would
like an
be-
expensive way to feel
It
crappy.
wouldn't be great.
Like if I'm
Too
gonna
much
pay a lot
stress.
of money to feel crappy, I'm gonna get like a really good thing of whiskey.
There are also cheaper and easier ways to feel,
Feel
like
crappy.
shit
Yeah,
every morning.
that's what I'm saying. I'm gonna be hungover. It'll be for a fun reason.
All right, let's get into our sport nutrition power rankings.
Okay, TJ.
What's your number one?
My number one is going to be Goo liquid energy gels. Huge fan, tried and true. Use them in a lot of ultras. I like them because they are easy to take down. They have 23 grams of carbohydrate, and they come in multiple flavors, and I really like that. So that's my number one. What's yours?
They are really good for
Yeah.
hot races.
Very
They
good
go
for hot
down
races.
So fast.
Yes, they do.
My number one right now is gonna be the Never Second 93 gram powder
Ooh.
packet.
So that has 93 grams of carb.
Yes.
Holy
in one
smokes.
flask.
Wow.
Yeah.
How do you use that in your fueling and hydration plan?
I drink it really quickly.
Oh my god.
No, I parse it out over the course of an hour.
Mm-hmm.
I usually do. I drink one of those an hour. Essentially, that's like one of the primary ways that I fuel for long events.
Nice.
And I love it because you hit 90 grams
Yeah.
right there, and then when you add in an extra gel or your other electrolyte drink plus an extra gel,
You're at 120 without even
you're
trying.
getting close to 100. Like you're starting to push up over 90,
Yeah.
which can be really helpful, as
Sick.
we'll talk about a
Yep,
little later
yep.
on. Okay, number two.
My number two is going to be the Goo Salted Lime Roctane. I love things that taste like margaritas, and I don't have any issue with like the traditional texture of goos and gels.
Yeah.
And I like this one because it has I think it has a little bit of caffeine, and it has, I mean, the evidence is pretty mixed on how impactful it is to take amino acids like while you're running, but I like the flavor of this. I like the carbohydrate content, and I feel like this one's also really nice for hot races, and it's a little denser than the liquid gels. So it's a little more like if I'm going a long way, sometimes the bigger gels are a little more annoying to carry.
Yeah. My number two is the Never Second liquid gel citrus flavor. I like the
I've been doing
berry
this.
as
I've been
well.
rocking this more lately.
I think they have a fruit punch. Kind of tastes like
And passion fruit.
Robitussin.
The fruit punch. It does taste like scissor. It's not
a little
good.
weird.
It's not my
It's
favorite.
not their best flavor.
No.
But I like these. I think they're like a bulked up version of the Goo liquid energy. They're 30 grams of carbs. So
7 additional grams of carb.
160 calories and
120.
120 calories. I should double check whether they're 120s or 160s because I'm pretty sure they're 30 grams, whatever that is. And they go down fast.
Yeah, they do.
And I feel like, again, like gels that go down fast, at least for me, everybody's a little bit different out there.
I mean, no one's out there trying to like savor that shit. No
Okay.
one's like, great mouthfeel, but
Okay, counterpoint.
a little bit of a tannic aftertaste.
counterpoint.
A very floral bouquet on this one.
How many times have you had an athlete say, I can't do products like Goo, Never Second, Morton, etc. because I don't like the taste?
Tell them they have to try harder.
My thought is like, why are you attempting to taste it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like what are you doing with it in your mouth?
Right. Like, get it down as fast as possible.
Yeah.
The point isn't to enjoy it.
No.
The point is to run fast.
Yeah.
And to maintain keep your glycogen stores high so
Correct.
you can maintain your output levels for as long as
Yeah,
possible.
if it's spending a lot of time on your palate, you are not doing it correctly.
Right. So it's like whatever goes down quickest, I think is the most effective.
I would agree with
might
that.
just be me because everybody wants different stuff. This is another reason
I mean,
why
it's not a tasting menu, it's a gel.
This is another reason you will never get me to eat a gummy in training. It will never,
I do like the
ever
Cliff
happen.
Shot blocks because they
Nope.
have some that taste like Jolly Ranchers. And I also do like to eat, like I'll do like gummy worms and like little like gas station
Nope.
Sour Patch Kid
Here's
things.
my reaning why that's bad for me. One, way too energy intensive to eat those. Chewing that stuff just takes longer.
Yeah.
Two, gets stuck in your teeth. So then like
Yeah,
the
I
flavor
never
of
I
it's
never
in there the
race
whole
with
time.
them.
Three, again, back to the first one. Too energy intensive. Like it just takes a lot of effort to eat those things, and I just don't want to expend any energy. On
Correct.
that.
And like I don't love like I mean, especially like if you're doing a fast race and you're trying to like run downhill and whatnot. Like I don't have time to be holding a bag of stuff when I'm running. So I'm like when I'm not trialing my nutrition strategy specifically for a race and I'm just like doing like my normal sort of like year-round running, I'll do like more gummies and like fun little snack things and like cookies and like gas station stuff. But when I'm racing and when I'm like really practicing my racing nutrition strategy, then I'm not chewing anything out there. Especially it's so cold where we live, like it'll literally just freeze. Like I actually have to keep some of my gels like in my sports bra so that they don't like freeze.
Okay, number 3.
Number 3, I'm going to go with the good old potato.
The mashed potato.
The mashed potato. Potato in any form.
Salted.
So I do put a little bit of Himalayan pink sea salt and nooch when I make I like to make little instant potatoes, and then I measure 1 cup and I put them in the little Ziploc. I put them in little Ziploc bags, and then when I'm racing, I like bite the tip off, so it sort of becomes like a little frosting squeezy bag.
Yeah.
So that way I know exactly how many grams of carbohydrate I'm getting, exactly how much sodium I'm
How do you measure
getting.
the carbs that go into those? Do you use like a cup? How do you know how much carbs in that?
It says on the nutrition facts.
Oh, on the you don't make these from scratch.
I'm not fuck no. Because I wanna know, you know.
Got it.
Also because I want to train with the things I'll be racing with. TJ literally had me cook an entire like bespoke thing of boiled potatoes the day before Western States.
I did that.
No, I cooked them. I remember
those.
cooking them.
Did you do that?
I also remember eating them.
They were good.
When I got called, they were really good.
I'm good at making mashed potatoes.
Again, like I'm not there to taste it. I just wanted to have like a more neutral, like here's a thing I can dependably eat. So I like the instant ones, so that way I can like pre-portion it and it's really easy. And I'm not making my crew peel potatoes for me the day before my 100.
Listen,
an insane person.
At Run Rabbit, Abby and I were in the back of your car making instant potatoes so they would be warm for you, and those things were so gross. There is no way.
It's a bad take. They're very good.
No way.
I would eat a whole box right now. I would do a line of them.
I can't wait to be cooking up some potatoes for Run Rabbit.
Heck yeah, dude.
100 this
all
year.
potatoes all the time.
Yep. I'm gonna have a whole potato station. All the Microcosm athletes who are racing can come over.
Yeah.
They can get their couple little plastic
What if
bags
we
full.
have a Microcosm tot shop?
Tot shop?
What if we did like a tot bar?
That'd be fun.
That'd be awesome. A sponsored tot bar.
All right, my number 3 is the Morton 160.
So
If I
wait,
diverge-
160 calories,
Yep.
right? Okay, how many grams of carb are we
40
talking?
grams.
Damn.
If I diverge from any sports nutrition on this top 5, just slap me because I like to keep my fueling as simple as possible.
Yeah.
I like these as a way to just mix it up from like just texture wise between
Right.
like a liquid to something that's like a little bit more like a Jello.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, a lot of carbs.
Yep.
Get them down.
Yep.
Keep running.
It tastes like nothing. It tastes like the ghost of a donut.
It does. It tastes like it does taste like
It
a
tastes
donut.
like a scratch and sniff sticker.
What?
Like there's not like a real flavor to it. You
No,
know?
it's just like a donut taste.
Kinda.
All right, number
They're
4.
fine.
Number 4.
Number 4, Gnarly Fuel 2.0. Again, I like the lime flavor. Make me something that tastes like a margarita, and I'm in. I like this because you can get it. It's like 500 milligrams of sodium, 200 calories. I think it's like 30 grams, 35 grams of carb, maybe 40 grams. I can't remember exactly how
I think
much.
you can get up to you can
Is
get
it
a lot
40?
of calories in there.
Right, but how much carb?
250 grams of calories, so like 50 grams.
Yeah, so
60
it's got a
grams?
solid carbohydrate sort of breakdown. I like this one. I feel like it's pretty infinitely drinkable when I want to do more. It's my go-to liquid nutrition.
Okay. Well, my second go-to liquid nutrition is the Morton 80-gram powder packets.
Wow.
I'm all about the packets.
Yeah.
And that was my tried and true for years until Never Second came around. It's kind of taken that top spot. But I do like to cycle in Morton during my races as well. I'll do like an hour Never Second. Next hour I'll go to Morton, throw in those gels in between, and then I'm getting like over 100 grams of carbs an hour pretty
Heck
easily.
yeah.
And then you get a stomach issue like I got, and your whole season screwed up. So take my advice. It works. Go ahead.
My last one is Scratch Horchata, the recovery mix. One of my secret hashtag nutrition hacks is when I'm doing longer races, like 50 miles and longer, I like to use recovery fuel, like either the Tailwind recovery mix or the Scratch recovery mix, because it has I think it has 8-9 grams of protein, which is kind of the maximum you can really do in an hour while doing endurance sports. But it's sort of it's a little thicker. It has a different texture going, a different flavor profile. It's got 250 calories going for it. So huge fan of that as a way of getting in something a little more substantial that has a high concentration of carbohydrates, but also has other macronutrients going for it as well, but still pretty distilled down to a super drinkable, digestible format.
I think probably using that a little bit is also really good for your gut training to be able to tolerate higher carbohydrate intakes, because just the volume feel of that is a lot greater than say your gnarly 2.0 drink mix. All right, my last one, I'm throwing a curveball in there. I like the Pop-Tart poppers.
Did you actually use these at States?
Yep.
How many did you eat?
I ate 2 packs.
Wow.
Yeah, before I kind of got heated out on any solid foods.
Yeah.
But I like these. I like to mix them in like a packet here.
So these
or
are the
there.
poppers, not the minis.
They're the poppers. They're different than the minis. The minis are dry AF, dude.
Yeah.
You don't want those things. Especially the poppers have a pop and a crunch.
Oh wow.
And they're nice. They like to mix it up. That's that's one
That's
you're just
that's your whole food.
Yeah, it's my whole food out there. Mixing that, getting that down with that Morton 80 or that Never Second 93.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
That's so sick.
And yeah, I mean, I'll do mashed potatoes too if it's a life and death situation.
I'm into mashed potatoes now. I'm all about it, dude. I used to be no, only people who are out of shape and don't train eat those. Then I was nope, it's me. I eat those now.
I've yet to reach my limit for how much race specific sports nutrition I can consume before needing.
You've not gotten the sweet fatigue or the Yeah.
No, the longer the hundreds get, I probably will start to flirt with that. Like,
Yeah.
I always have an alternative plan.
Right.
Hence the mashed potatoes, which I did not eat any of during Western states.
Well, I ate them because I thought I was going to pace for 6 miles, and I ended up pacing 22, and I was like, well, I need to eat dinner
You're well
right the
fueled.
fuck now.
You're
I ate a
fueled.
bucket of mash. I ate
Carbs.
what was a day's worth of potato for you. I ate for dinner.
You know what the secret is to those mashed potatoes?
Carb. Hand peeling them for an hour and a half the day before.
Only takes 10 minutes.
It's like the French laundry over here.
You save a little bit of the water that the potatoes are cooked in because they're very starchy, and then you use that to get them like really creamy when you add, and then you add the salt and pepper, and it's delicious.
Okay, chef, let's talk about carb intake.
Okay, chef, what
So
do you got for us
it
here?
sounds like you're trialing a slightly higher carbohydrate approach. I'm curious what you're doing and what do you work with athletes when they're thinking, because like we're hearing right now a lot of stuff about people like really pushing this high carb approach, going up to like 120 grams of carbohydrate an hour
or more. Yeah.
or more. What are you doing and what are you working with athletes on right now, and how do you contextualize this sort of like flashy new maybe for lack of a better word, trend?
Well, I think it's more the progression that the sport is going in. It's kind of, we're learning some stuff that was happening in cycling, and we're figuring out how to apply that in a sport that has a lot more jostling of the stomach,
Right.
Where there's a lot more impact forces, so it makes it difficult to eat as much. So I think most athletes are probably familiar with like what have been the recommendations for a long time. 200 calories to about 360 grams of 360 calories an hour, up to essentially 90 grams of carbs an hour is kind of the max that athletes can metabolize while competing in endurance events, while doing endurance training. Like, that's kind of the limit of our GI system's abilities to assimilate that carbohydrate back into the system. And so like a lot of athletes do push for that 90 grams of carbs an hour, but what we've seen like over the last couple of years actually, and what's been like really in the media lately has been can I get 100, like athletes getting 120 grams of carbs an hour, because that is essentially allowing the athlete to have more glycogen availability, increased muscular function, increased cognitive performance, and a significant reduction in the amount of muscle breakdown that's happening over these long events. So that's extending endurance significantly. And there's there's a huge gap between muscle breakdown at 90 grams of carbs per hour and 120 or more.
Oh, really?
Like, there's a huge discrepancy.
Cool.
So if you're getting 120 in, you're taking on a lot less muscle damage. So think about that over the course of a race that takes you 14, 15, 16, 20, 24 hours, 48 hours. You know, like, you want to have as little breakdown as possible. That's also going to have a huge recovery advantage too. So I've been trying to push up my intake, and
where are you at right now?
I mean, I've done like up to 120 grams of carbs an hour. I think I kind of like was one of the reasons why I screwed up my stomach at the race in Marin a couple months ago, like just really pushing the carbs and probably like not having trained that at those intensities enough screwed it up. So it's really important how you go about.
Well, also you'd
like,
been
that
training for a 50 miler and then you raced a 50K.
It's just completely different effort level.
Yeah.
I shouldn't have taken in as many grams of carbohydrate. I should have reduced my carbohydrate intake. My stomach wasn't ready, because what happens is when you're exercising, the blood is diverted from your GI tract. It goes to your muscles, it goes to your skin, and it's not in the GI system, so it impairs your ability to digest and assimilate those carbohydrates. It can lead to issues, which, you know, can be explosive for some people.
Wow, evocative. Thank you for that.
So the science of high carb fueling really is about getting 120 grams of carbs or more in per hour. And this has been studied now and is continuing, there's a continuing body of research around this. But essentially, the main takeaway from these studies done in one particular study done back in 2020 with elite runners. So these are runners that are already very fit. They already likely fuel and do a lot of things in their training right. Their fueling is probably already at 90. They tested and pushed a bunch of runners to do 120 grams of carbs per hour, and they saw significant reduced muscle damage and perceived exertion as a result. So those athletes perform better as a result of taking in more carbohydrate. So obviously now we've seen athletes like David Roche really promote like that and talk about like how he's training his gut in order to tolerate these things so then he can run at a greater percentage of his aerobic threshold at these races to have record-breaking successes. So naturally, like as coaches, we get a lot of questions about this now because it's becoming really popularized.
Yeah.
So how does an athlete begin to increase their tolerance?
Well, I would also say one caveat is like, as with all things, would love to see more science on female athletes. There's definitely a lack of research specifically on how this relates to female athletes. And I want people to listen hard and hear that I am not saying that that female athletes should fuel less. That's not what I'm saying. But the research doesn't always unequivocally support women necessarily pushing it as high as we're seeing male athletes push it right now. Again, would love to see more research.
You may not need to get to 120 grams to have reduced muscle damage, but it's impossible to know without the research.
Right. Yeah. So we'd love to see more research, and we know that sex and body frame size do impact folks' ability to metabolize carbohydrates. So that's a little bit of a lens to put on this as well. Is like if you're a smaller framed female athlete, you should not just be like, great, Jim Walmsley does this, I'm going to do that tomorrow. But same for all things, right? That doesn't mean you can't. Like with training, with building, I think that I would always encourage people to try to push those fueling limits. I think that living in a world where for so long athletes were told to like try to do more with less, I like anything that pushes back against that narrative. But that's wrong. Doing more with less is not validated in the science, and extrapolating from a single outlier is also never validated in the science. So trying to bring a level of nuance here and individuality that this is not going to be a strategy that is immediately successful with everyone.
Well, yes, but it's important to recognize that the GI system is trainable.
Correct.
So if you're at a certain place in your fueling, you can increase from where you're at.
Correct. And I would encourage most people to have the mentality of trying to increase.
And I do think it's important to recognize a couple things that are truths in this process. If you don't eat high carb in your day-to-day, you're less likely
to be able to
utilize carbohydrate in your fueling. So you're going to struggle with this. If you don't eat the right amount of food day to day, just straight up you have red S or you're not meeting your energy availability needs, you're going to struggle with this in training. So it actually starts on a lifestyle side of this. Like, are you eating high carb in life? Are you eating enough? Sometimes you push your GI system to be able to handle more food because this is all about stressing the system, and then that stress is creating more tolerance.
Yeah, and again, like if you are, we can't stress this enough that if you have low energy availability, if you're not meeting your energy needs day to day, it doesn't matter what the fuck you do in training. It's just not going to work. And also, it's like, you can't make up for lost time. Like if you happen to, be restricting in life and then you try to fuel like a boss when you're training,
it's not going to work.
It doesn't matter. And it's going to you're still going to have a lot of issues. And particularly with female athletes, studies are showing that even if you're meeting your in-day energy needs. From a macronutrient perspective, if you have a deficit of if you're not meeting your carbohydrate needs specifically, female athletes, it dramatically increases their risk of bone stress injury and hormonal dysfunction.
It's really incredible. I did
they're your friend.
A deep dive on how much the carbohydrates are integral in the firing of the muscle. That if you just don't have those carbs on board, your neuromuscular function is decreased, the speed at which your muscles fire is decreased, the amount of power you can put out is decreased, your running economy is decreased. So it has all of these really tough like performance downstream. There's the downstream of this is a lot of stuff around performance that is important to talk about, like baseline performance. Now if you want to have peak performance and push your potential, really relies on this, and the science backs that up. Like if you want to run well late into races, you have to have those carbs on board because of how much they're involved in the process of running.
Yeah, I would also say when we talk about practicing your nutrition strategy, I don't mean in your 2 longest runs of the training cycle. I mean for every long run of the training cycle for 12 weeks. Like
right.
You and I are racing in March. I've been practicing my race day fueling Jan 1. Let's go.
It never ends. And if you get off of this stuff for a while, your body
I wasn't fueling exactly the same as I am now, like when I was training this fall on long runs.
And that's normal. But if you get off of the practice of using high carb for a while, note that it'll take a few sessions to build the tolerance back. But you can build the tolerance back, and your body will remember that it had that tolerance. It keeps that muscle memory. Maybe a couple things before we head over to training plateaus.
Yeah.
Just if athletes want to start to work on increasing their carbohydrate intake during training. The first thing that's recommended is like just practice with more volume. Whether you're just drinking more fluids on your run, or
actually drink the correct amount of fluid, because if you are drinking too much or not enough, that's actually going to impact the osmolality of your gut, and that's going to make metabolizing these things more difficult. So don't just it's not like a competitive eater trying to expand their stomach. I would say make sure you nail down your hydration strategy as a key part of that overall fueling strategy. Because if you don't have enough water, if you have too much water, if you don't have enough sodium, you have too much sodium, all of those things are going to impact your ability to digest and metabolize carbohydrate.
It's true. And if you're on a long run, like more than 3 hours, pay attention to that. If it's just a 2-hour run, that's probably not going to be as impactful, but I do think that's a good point. Find a way to increase the volume in your stomach. Shorter run, sure. Use fluid. Be really mindful of that, obviously, if it's a longer run. But increase that volume. Doesn't matter what it is. Eat a burger, eat pizza, eat the stuff that you would normally eat. Just eat more of it, but just increase that volume. And learn to run with that bloated feeling. Learn to run with that full stomach.
I feel like as a person with a not super flexible work schedule, this is a training strategy I implement very frequently.
Yeah, I mean, maybe you don't notice that. Like if you go out to run after having lunch, you're actually practicing a little bit of pushing your GI
Teaching
system.
my body how to metabolize pad thai more efficiently.
Right, and systematically. Like you start with your tolerance to the volume, and then over time, you narrow the focus onto what are the things that you assimilate the best. What do you digest best? 2-to-1. Glucose to fructose, you dial in.
That tends to be
specifics.
where most people are. You're not going to have an athlete who can digest 4-to-1 fructose glucose. Also, fructose isn't as efficient because fructose has to be converted to glucose before it's used. So,
but it is dependent on what people eat in their day to day. So,
but fructose is inherently less efficient because it has to be converted into glucose.
Right, it might be less efficient, but if you are an athlete who only eats high fructose foods, you're going to struggle.
So you're a fruitarian.
Listen, we've been coaching a long time. We've seen it all. There are people out there actually who are in prominent positions that advocate for just eating berries in their runs.
Yeah.
So what do you think they're getting from berries?
I think they're getting a kickback from the big berry lobby.
Anyways, I don't want to go down the rabbit hole too much of the nuances. Athletes can take the deep dive on their own. Increase the volume. Then when you feel like you can tolerate that volume, You can try to then push that volume up a little bit more. The way that you might want to do that is focusing on the specific nutritional sources that work best for you. Like, everybody's very individual because of lifestyle. What you want to eat out there is going to be different. Not everyone's going to want to do all the sports nutrition that I want to do. Like, that's just what works for me. That's what I practiced for a long time. So that's what I'm going to use to increase my needs.
Yeah, but simple carbohydrate is inherently more effective. Like, you're not going to meet a person out there. Like, this is the reason that fat adaptation doesn't work, is because fat is a less efficient energy source.
We
so
know
like
that.
there are limits to all of this. And I would also say that a lot of times I have athletes, they go out and they try a fueling strategy and it doesn't feel amazing the first time. That these things, it always takes practice, right? Like, it does take like repeated bouts to implement this stuff. And two primary reasons that I see athletes have trouble with fueling is A, they're not fit enough. As you get fitter, your ability to digest and metabolize anything is improved because less blood is diverted away from your GI system. Secondarily, dialing in that nutrition and sodium strategy. Like, if you're trying to do all this fancy carbohydrate stuff, but you don't know what your sweat rate is and you don't know what your fluid loss rate is, the math's just not going to math. And all of these things have to work in concert together.
Right. But this was specifically about high carb. And so
but you're not going to be able to push high carb without nailing down your hydration.
No. And that's where, like, it's so weedy and complicated. This stuff should be practiced at least 3 months out from your race. Every single long run is an opportunity. There's also workouts where you're putting your GI system under stress because of intensity, where you can push up that volume of intake and practice this as well. Use those things, implement them over time to see where, like, what feels good for you and what doesn't. Like, it is highly individual. That's why there's not tons of people doing 120. There's a lot more people focusing on 90, even know that there's solid research that suggests that 120 reduces muscle damage.
Right, because like there is individual variation here. And again, there's sex variation that I would love to see some more science on. Please, anyone.
All right, let's talk training plateaus. What's a training plateau? So
this is going to be a period where your performance levels off, even when you are consistently efforting and training. And, you know, I think that for a lot of runners, plateaus can feel so frustrating, but they are really common. Like, they're definitely, like, I've definitely been on, I think I had essentially a 9-month training plateau in like 2023, maybe, what I would describe. Like, I just was like doing fine, but nothing, like, I wasn't having huge, like, oh my God, like, I did this segment faster. I like did this workout better. Like, I felt better. I just was kind of like in a bit of a holding pattern. I would say likely that was because of some like work life stress stuff I had going on. But I think that, you know, they can feel scary and frustrating, and it's always heartbreaking to see an athlete like leave the team when they're on a plateau, because I also like plateaus are a precursor to a breakthrough. You know, like, a breakthrough is just the end of a plateau. So you sometimes necessarily have to engage in a plateau to get to the breakthrough.
Well, it's just part of the process. And I think psychologically, every athlete needs to understand that, like, progress is never linear, right? There's peaks and troughs. There's portions in the middle where you don't feel like there's movement on either side, even when you're putting in quite a lot of input. But some of these things happen for a reason. One of the reasons is, like, maybe our approach is not novel enough anymore.
You got to change up the stimulus.
Right. Or maybe our recovery is impacted for various different reasons, like sleep isn't.
Yeah, actually, let's go through a list of like specific reasons that I think are the key reasons that people plateau. And I would say number one is training error. So I would say that insufficient recovery, including inadequate sleep, high stress levels, those things can really prevent adaptation and progress. Another big one is going to be poor or insufficient nutrition, particularly underfueling, because that limits energy availability. And if you do not have a surplus of energy, you're not going to adapt to increased training stimulus. Increased training stimulus means increased adaptation, means getting off a plateau. And I think that a lot of times, sometimes athletes will feel like they need to limit they maybe have a weight loss goal, and so they're restricting, and then they're training. I mean, best case scenario, plateaus, a lot of times it'll regress, or like something more negative will happen. So a big, like, the number, like, if you're plateauing, first things to look at are sleep, nutrition, and stress.
Yeah. Okay, number 2, lack of mileage progression. So that training novelty, sticking to the same weekly mileage without gradually increasing training volume can lead to stagnation. Like, you have to have progressive overload.
Yep.
You have to have stress to create adaptations. Adaptation does not come any other way. So if you don't have stress and then rest, forget about it. So progress your volume over time in order to help prevent spending time on the plateau. And you could look at this like in terms of year-to-year cycles, week-to-week, month-to-month, quarter-to-quarter, training block to training block. There's a lot of different ways to look at and process that information, but in general, you want to keep that mileage progressing if you can.
Yeah. Number 3 is injury-induced inconsistency. So recurrent injuries will disrupt the consistent training that's required to improve your fitness.
Yeah.
And a lot of times those injuries will stem from overtraining, potentially improper form, an imbalance, inadequate strength training. And the biggest thing you can do is like figure out what is going on that's causing injury, assess the root cause of that injury. Because I think a lot of times we see athletes get stuck in the cycle of like, they're injured, then they sign up for an event, and so as soon as they're healthy enough to run, they run, do too much, get injured again. So they're like constantly stuck in this negative feedback loop of like not just doing the consistent training and always panic training. So figure out what might be causing your injuries and address those things.
Number 4, neglecting your speed work. I see this a lot with athletes who are like new to my coaching roster and haven't worked with the coach before. They just have not had any structured speed work. Maybe they go to a track session every couple weeks, but nothing is part of a larger training architecture. And so therefore it's very hard to reap any adaptations from that stressful work. So start to implement a structure to your speed work and your training in general. Like, if you do certain training at certain energy levels, you're going to get certain adaptations that are going to improve your function as a runner, and that's going to help you get off the plateau. Like, if you're on a plateau, look at the kind of speed work that you've been doing. Have you been doing the same type for a long time? Maybe you need to adjust your approach and look at something more novel and take a different take a different approach into your speed work.
Yeah, and I would also say along those same lines, reason number 5, runners plateau, is monotonous training routines. So if you're just repeating the same types of workouts week after week, that causes the body to adapt and reduces training stimulus. So you need to shake up your training variety. You need to, you can do that through terrain, pace, workout types, keeping the body challenged and adaptable. Like, let's say maybe someone is kind of in this weird gray zone of like, well, they're not doing a ton of structured speed, but they're occasionally doing some strides. Well, you're going to sort of limit your potential there because, well, what about developing that VO2 max? What about developing that lactate threshold? Lactate threshold and VO2 max are both kind of performance caps. So if you're not meaningfully trying to address those specific performance caps, you're not going to ever be able to push past them no matter how many strides you do.
Lastly, overlooking strength training.
You know, I love my strength training.
You are the advocate. It's slowly I'm adopting
getting swole, getting
a more
yoked.
Balanced position
Hashtag
on this.
yoked.
It's important to have some strength training going. You don't want to have muscular imbalances. If you're not strength training, it can reduce your power output, which is a factor in running economy, and it can also increase your risk of injury. So go back to that injury cycle kind of part to this conversation. Strength work supports endurance overall. And so if you're not doing that, it's something that you could do to break out of a plateau.
Yeah. Quickly, let's talk about a few practical solutions. I would say, number 1, hire a coach. Ideally, if you're already listening to our podcast, you're doing that. But if you needed a sign from the universe to do that, This is your sign. Hi, I'm the universe. Hire a coach. But gradually increase your mileage. We need that progressive overload. So add, ballpark, it really depends. The 10% rule isn't necessarily a thing for every athlete, but for newer athletes, amateur athletes, starting at that 5 to 10% increase in weekly mileage over time to build that aerobic capacity without overloading the body. Work on periodizing your training, incorporating cycles of base building, intensity, and recovery. Have deload weeks, have peak weeks, and then target different energy systems with threshold and VO2 max workouts.
Get that speed work going. Number
Love it.
2, tempo runs, intervals, strides, whatever it is, have it part of a overall training architecture. Do not just randomly throw stuff into your training. That's a great way to just stay on the plateau.
Yeah.
Build out a plan. Even if you're following something that you found on the internet, it's better than just trying to throw everything,
just vibing
everything at it.
Yeah.
All right, number 3.
Add variety to your training. So diversify your workouts like hill repeats, long runs, fartleks, and change up the training environments to challenge your body in new ways. Sometimes I like to shake things up and make athletes do a lot of their work uphill on the treadmill to make them harder, or maybe doing more work on flat terrain or on doing stuff on technical terrain, working uphills, working downhills. And I would always, encourage that people alternate between hard and easy days so that you optimize recovery and adaptation. So getting back to that principle of periodization, and for more on this, check out our podcast we did a few weeks ago on block versus hybrid periodization if you want to really geek out.
Strength train regularly, as we spoke about. It's just incredibly important to build strength and resilience. You can do that through 1 to 2 sessions a week. They don't have to be long, 15 to 20 minutes.
You don't need to go pump
enough.
iron for 3 hours at the gym, and dear God, don't do CrossFit.
Target your running specific muscles and movements. Make it functional for the sport that you're doing.
Prioritize recovery. Can't stress this enough. You cannot out-train bad recovery. Make sure you are getting enough sleep, because that is crucial for muscle repair and overall health and well-being. And really make sure that you're managing stress through mindfulness and relaxation techniques, and plan rest days strategically. If you are a brain surgeon and you have one day that's 12 hours on your feet doing brain surgery, guess what? That's not a rest day. So make sure that you're working with your coach. Listen to our podcast episode we did a few weeks ago on training for blue collar athletes, on some strategies there. But again, know that the body knows stress, not miles. So if you're not managing stress in your life, or you think that running is your therapy and you get your stress out while you're actually breaking down your muscle tissue and flooding your body with cortisol, just do a Google. It's not that hard to science. I know you may feel superficially like running relieves stress. The only reason that training works is because your body perceives it as stress. Right. Them's the facts. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
Evaluate your nutrition. As it's been interwoven into this entire kind of the themes of this call, this podcast today. Just ensure you're eating enough calories and nutrients to fuel your training and support your recovery. If you're in doubt at all that you're not getting enough, eat more. Because if you're not getting enough, you will have downstream effects from that very quickly. Yeah. And it'll make it really hard to get off that plateau. Balanced diet is really important. Sufficient carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. A balanced plate. Cannot
lose weight and improve performance. Check out Kylie and I's recent podcast about the myth and science of racing weight on Your Diet Sucks.
Yeah. A couple takeaways to close it out. Performance plateaus are a natural part of training. Just get used to it. Yeah. You will be there.
Yeah.
The process is not linear as much as we want it to be, and we love those flowy moments out on the trails and the roads.
Yep.
It just isn't going to happen all the time, and that's okay. It's an opportunity to reassess and adjust your approach.
Training is a scatter plot, not a line chart. So know that there's going to be outlier days in any direction. I wish there was a pie chart, because I like pie.
You like pie?
I like pie.
How much of this is linear?
Pie is very linear for me.
Starts at one slice.
Yeah, but I think,
Ends
for
at no
most
slices.
ends at no slices. But if you, make sure that you're meeting your basic needs, make sure that you're being strategic, work with a coach, work with a registered dietitian, nutritionist, recruit people to your team, and understand that plateaus are part of the process and that's okay. What defines us most as athletes is how we respond to those periods where the wins aren't easy, where the progress isn't simple. The people who are able to sit in those moments and keep pushing through are the people who actually become great.
It's true. Turn those challenges and those plateaus into building blocks and see what happens.
Turn them into pie.
Turn them into pie. All right, thanks, guys. If you've got a topic you'd like us to discuss on a podcast, question, hot or not ideas, you want some support in your running journey, reach us. microcosmcoaching@gmail.com, microcosm-coaching.com. We'll see you guys next week.